Welcome back inside the Veterans Memorial Arena on this special St. Patrick's Day edition of B-Sens Hockey here, our simulcast on the Senators Hockey Network, 1430 The Team and 680 WINR, and of course here on the TV side with MY8. Grady Wittenberg with you, pleased to have as my first intermission guest. He'll be joining us both intermissions here tonight, the Executive Vice President of the Binghamton Senators in charge of business operations, Tom Mitchell. And Tom, welcome to tonight's broadcast. And first and foremost, a couple of Sundays ago here in Binghamton, admitted to the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, and I know that had to be a very, very proud moment for you. And you take a look over the years of the people that have been inducted, players from all different teams that have taken part in hockey history here in Broome County, from players, broadcaster Roger Neal to a trainer with John Smith, and now an executive. Talk about your feelings about being inducted along with Danielle Lacroix.
Well, certainly a big honor for me, and something that and that wasn't really looking forward to it, but they kind of sprung it on me, and I mean, it is an honor. I think that, as I said that day, it's been 25 years of a lot of fun. It's been it's got me into some, I've got to know some people that I otherwise wouldn't have got to know. I got to know or reintroduced to some people that I hadn't seen in many years, that back in my playing days, who got involved in hockey in one way or another. So it's been quite an experience, and I'm pretty proud of it.
Talk about being involved in hockey for 25 years, and with that, I'm sure as you look back, it's probably gone by just like that. What was life before you got involved in hockey? Obviously, you were a player, but obviously a business owner here in Binghamton as well. This isn't your full-time endeavor here, being the chief operator here of the Binghamton Senators for the ownership group here in the Southern Tier.
You know, I consider it full-time. I consider my other business full-time too, so I'm doing double duty here. But that's the only way I know how to do things, and I work at both businesses. Thank God they're only a half a mile apart, so I can shoot back and forth all the time. But it's been it certainly hasn't been a 40-hour week for many years.
Now we take a look. Hockey, when you were in the area, was the Broome Dusters. That started off in the mid-'70s, and with that, I guess right around 10 years later, you were involved in local ownership. I guess before we talk about getting involved in the ownership aspect of it with Jim McCoy and Bob Carr, talk about your thoughts when hockey came to Binghamton on a professional level.
Well, I mean, I think I got here the year after it actually came here, but I think it's a great asset for this community. It's, as I said the other day, it's one of the little assets that we have in our community that set us apart. I mean, there are 29 or 30 American League franchises throughout the world, and I sit at Board of Governors meetings all the time listening to cities and groups making pitches for franchises either to move there or to buy a franchise, and we already have one, and we need to take care of it, and that's a goal of mine each and every day.
Getting involved in ownership, you saw hockey here in the Southern Tier, and then it was bumped up. The Dusters, I think, for 2 or 3 seasons at the North American Hockey League level, which probably nowadays is the equivalent of the International Hockey League. Bringing it up to the AHL level, the Dusters did that. Then the Hartford Whalers came in, put their developmental team here, and a handful of years later, you got involved. And can you kind of walk us through that process, and I guess what sparked the interest in bringing a couple of partners along the way?
Yeah, I was a friend of mine asked me to go to a meeting one night with about 25 other guys that were going to throw a few dollars in the hat and buy half the Whalers Hockey Club. The Hartford Whalers owned it at the time, and they were looking to try to get some local people involved to try to rejuvenate the franchise a little bit. And I said, sure, I'll go. And so I did. I went to that meeting, and there was about 25 guys there, including Bob Carr and Jim McCoy. And but when it came time to put the money in the hat, only 3
a lot of guys were running for the door.
There were only 3 of us that showed up, Jim, Bob, and myself. And I remember that meeting very distinctly. It was in one of McCoy's restaurants, and Emil Francis walked in, and he and I had known each other from years ago. And I played my first and second year junior B in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, and that's where Emil's from. And I happened to play for a coach that was a good friend of his. Grew up with him, and so that's how I knew him a little bit. And he said, you've got to get involved in this thing. And it's not going to be half the team anymore. It's the whole thing. But we'll help you out a little bit. And he did. And our first 5 years with the Whalers went pretty smooth. First 4 years. The 5th year, they had a new owner, and he decided that he wanted to move his minor league team a little closer to home and move them to Springfield. So we had to go find somebody else, and that's when the Rangers came.
And certainly different chapters along the way as far as being involved with the ownership group, but it's been pretty steady. Obviously, with the gap of the UHL's BC Icemen being here, you were not involved in that, but as far as high-level AAA hockey, you've definitely been a key part of that. Talk about that transition from the Hartford Whalers to the New York Rangers coming in, and with it, obviously, it was a very sour end with the team winning just 11 games, talking about the Binghamton Whalers back in the 89-90 campaign. The Rangers come in, and it was good times here in Binghamton.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
were excited, and obviously a little bit more regional feel to it. But unfortunately, that came to a bad end from the local
Yep.
folks' perspective in the
Yep.
mid-'90s.
Yeah, well, it was an interesting transition because the last year the Whalers were here, we knew that was their last year. We actually knew that before the season started, and I happened to be at our Board of Governors annual meeting that summer in Hilton Head, and Neil Smith and I always seemed to wind up going out for dinner, and we're out having dinner, and he mentioned something about he was looking into the Ranger position, which hadn't been the general manager's position, hadn't been filled yet, and never thought too much of it. And about 2 weeks later, I'm back home, and I'm over in Elmira doing something with my other business, and you may recall the old Tomahawk restaurant on Route 17 there.
All right, where you're talking about.
I'm driving actually back to Binghamton, just outside Elmira, and I hear something on the radio about Neil Smith has just been hired as the new general manager of the New York Rangers. I stopped at the Tomahawk restaurant. There was a payphone there that I was used to using before cell phones were really in vogue. I stopped there, and I called Neil, and I said, "What's going on here?" And I said, "You guys are in Flint. The Whalers are leaving. Binghamton next year. What about coming to Binghamton?" He says, "Sounds like a good deal to me." And that's where it started. That's where it started. And we kind of worked on it a little bit, and we came to an agreement that we would make this happen. And they said, "Now, you got to be very, very quiet all winter long because the people in Flint have been very good to us, and we don't want to hurt their business or anything." So we did. We kept our mouth shut all winter long, and we lived through that last year with the Whalers, which was tough. And we knew what was going to happen the next year, but we couldn't say anything. And then one night, I think it was in February, when things were, for lack of a better expression, going to hell in a handbasket here, the Rangers helped us. I was watching the game one night, and they had just called Mike Richter up from Flint, and John Davidson, doing the color, he said something like, "Well, they're not going to have to go all the way to Flint, Michigan next year to call players up because the minor league team's going to be in Binghamton, New York." And he turned around and he pointed at a map on the back wall to show where Binghamton was. And so we never let the cat out of the bag. They did it themselves, and it was
You didn't
great
shoot
after
yourselves
that.
in the foot. You could point the finger at them and say they did it.
Exactly. And that's how it happened.
Well, a 6 or 7 season run here in the Southern Tier, and kind of came to an end. Madison Square Garden kind of became more involved, and they wanted to uproot the franchise and talk about the day that you and Bob Carr and Jim McCoy finally came to the realization that the sale was going through, and AHL hockey for the time being, I guess for a 5-year season or 5-year span rather,
Yep.
was not going to be here in Binghamton.
Well, it did. It happened very quickly. It happened at a Board of Governors meeting in Springfield when I thought I was aware that the Rangers were looking at Hartford. I was aware that Pittsburgh was looking at Hartford, and I was aware that the International Hockey League was looking at Hartford. And I was under the impression from the Rangers that they didn't think they had much of a chance of winning the Hartford Beauty Contest, it was called. And all of a sudden at that meeting, I found out that they had made the deal. And I think Pittsburgh already had their jerseys made, from what I understand, for the new team that was going to be in Hartford. So it was disappointing to me to see the American League leave Binghamton. I thought possibly there was a chance that somebody else would jump right back in here, but that didn't happen. And that's how the Rangers got out of here. I think that in hindsight, they would have been way better to stay right here.
Well, that kind of brings you up to date, at least the first part of Tom Mitchell's career in administrative hockey, with the Binghamton Rangers being bought by MSG and moved to Hartford. We're going to take a time out. We'll have much more coming up on this edition of the Time Warner Cable Intermission Report, but Tom's going to join me during our second intermission between the second and third periods, and with that, kind of get a state of the team address and state of the organization address with Binghamton's relationship with Ottawa and looking ahead to the future. We'll be back with more in a moment here on the Senators Hockey Network.